start to lose my faith, and tomorrow I'm still to your jealous voice. I close my eyes and hear the voice whisper quietly, saying peace, peace, peace begins with me. Oh, peace, peace, peace begins with me. Trying to find a way to peace, we must see that peace is the way. Peace is in every step we take. It's how we walk through every day. So close your eyes and hear the voice whisper lovingly, saying peace, peace, peace begins with me. Oh, peace, peace, peace begins with me. Peace in every moment, peace in every step, peace in every heartbeat, peace in every breath, peace in every moment, peace in every step, peace in every heartbeat, peace in every breath, peace in every moment, peace in every step, peace in every heartbeat, peace in every breath.
That's Edgar Lockett and Lisa Ferraro singing their song Peace. We need that today, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're going to bring some of that in. I see some yellows and some blues, and yellow and blue makes green. So we are addressing this idea that there is need for peace in the world and that it begins with each and every one of us. So good morning, welcome to Center for Spiritual Living Morristown. I'm Frankie Timmers, the spiritual director here, and I'm blessed to have with me Lori Carlson, one of our only fabulous practitioner students, working hard towards getting licensed. So she will share some wonderful peace wisdom. So today we are in the last Sunday of February, and the theme is the inner life. And those of you that are not familiar yet, this is the theme for the year, and this is over there, so you can grab it and follow it and even color it in. And it describes the theme for every month within the year, which is Living Everyday Wonder. And what I'm going to talk about today is this idea of what does rich mean? Rich beyond measure is the truth of our very being. If we're not experiencing that, we get to connect more deeply with that. And so I want to bring some clarity to this idea of richness, of which peace, of course, is one. And then how can we serve from that place of clarity to make the world a better place? So if you are online, we are so glad that you're here with us virtually, whether it's today, tomorrow, or sometime in the near future or distant future. We'd love for you to say hello, make comments, ask questions, have ideas of things that you would love for us to share with you and present to you. If you want to know what's going on in our community, go to our website, cslmorristown.org, where we always do our best to keep everything up to date. That's also a place where you can give if you'd like to support this community. And I want you to really check that out, whether you're here or not. There's a table, there's an area over there with all kinds of information. We have some workshops coming up. Our grand opening, our official grand opening is March 20th, which is the first day of spring. And we need you to RSVP because see how small this space is? We have 40 chairs. So we're going to 2 celebrations. The first one is at 9:30. It's simple. The second one is at 11, and then there's a social hour after that for the 11 o'clock group. So some people just don't even want to deal with that, so you just want to come and experience it and go home. So it's important that you RSVP in which celebration you will be arriving at. And after the social time we have that we're sharing with this community from Brookside Church, we're going to have Michael Malik doing a chakra meditation workshop. So that's going to be fun from 1 to 2:30. And then the week after that, our beloved Reverend Janice is starting a program called Transformation 2022. And that's a monthly program. So you're going to want to sign up for that because that's happening sooner than you think. And just hot off the press, mark your calendar for April 10th when we're going to have our annual meeting. So that's that. And now I would love to have you say hello to each other in a quiet way. We're going to do it very quietly because silence is golden, right? So put your hands together. This is the Namaste. Namaste means the divinity in me blesses the divinity in you. So feel yourself blessing someone else and feel yourself be blessed by others. Namaste. Peace in you, peace in me. That's how we share, right? All right, so now we have Lori blessing us with an opening practice, a spiritual practice, an intro, and then she's going to do a very special healing treatment.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Reverend Frankie's topic for this morning, as she said, is inner riches, our inner life, the deep riches of our inner life. What is a greater, deeper richness than inner peace? Now, inner peace is something that can be very difficult to find in these days right now with what's happening in the world. But remember that in this teaching, there is one universal mind. So what happens in our consciousness creates something in the planet. We affect the planet around us with what we hold true in our consciousness. So I invite you today to become, in honor of solidarity with the Ukraine and all those places that are struggling in the world, to become a part of this consciousness of peace, to expand, grow, and release this peace into the world around us. I would like you to focus, instead of thinking about hopelessness or helplessness or despair and all of the things you can't do in this world, focus instead on that concept of the butterfly effect. And I don't mean that beautiful book by our beloved Gail Jones. I mean the discovery that scientists have made that even a small change in one place in the world, like a butterfly flapping its wings in South America, can have a large and strong effect someplace else in the world, like creating a tornado in Africa. Of course, we don't want to create any tornadoes unless they be tornadoes of peace. But we can flap our wings. We can flap our wings through our practices of prayer and meditation. And by focusing our attention on harmony, wholeness, peace, truth, and love, so that we radiate those things out into the world in our everyday life, and therefore achieving a sense of peace within that radiates out to the world without, because we know as within, so without. So whatever ours is ours to do in this world, in this time of so much struggle, it is all starts within. So I'm going to start this morning with a prayer, an affirmative prayer, written many years ago by our founder, Ernest Holmes, but still very relevant today. So I invite you to close your eyes and hear these words as if they were your own. I know there is but one mind, which is the mind of God, in which all people live and move and have their being. I know there is a divine pattern for humanity, and within this pattern, there is infinite harmony and peace, cooperation, unity, and mutual helpfulness. I know that the mind of each person, being one with the mind of God, shall discover the method, the way, and the means best fitted to permit the flow of divine love between individuals and nations. I know there shall be a free interchange of ideas, of cultures, of spiritual concepts, of ethics, of educational systems and scientific discoveries, for all good belongs to all alike. I know that because the divine mind has created us all, we are bound together in one infinite and perfect unity. In bringing about world peace, I know that all people and all nations will remain individual, but unified for the common purpose of promoting peace, happiness, harmony, and prosperity. I know that deep within every person, the divine pattern of perfect peace is already implanted. I now declare that in each person and in leaders of thought everywhere, this divine pattern moves into action and form to the end that all nations and all people shall live together in peace, harmony, and prosperity forever. And so it is.
So it is.
And I invite you to continue with your eyes closed for a minute and hear these words, which are going to lead us into a few moments of meditation. Inner personal peace is a conscious awareness of the presence of God in, through, around, and as one's own self, one's very being. The wonder and delight of that awareness is that it can be cultivated and it can become constant. When that happens, the awareness grows and expands to include everyone and everything. It becomes divine vision that sees and recognizes only divinity. And suddenly, it becomes contagious. An aspect of consciousness that brings peace from personal to universal into every corner of existence. I call that world peace. It is our intention, our goal, and our purpose here today to know, grow, and expand this peace. So I invite you to contemplate these phrases to yourself. How may I bring a greater sense of peace into every aspect of my life? Whom do I need to forgive? Where might I let go of resentment, frustration, anger, or fear? How can I simply demonstrate more kindness to those around me? What can I do on a daily basis to improve and expand upon this sense of peace in my own life? May this peace spill out from the depth of my soul into the world around me, so that I stand with all those protesting violence, facing struggle and war. I challenge you to make this a daily practice, to cultivate your own inner peace, and then project it out into the world, knowing that we are all one. And you can keep this sense of peace as we go into our next song. And I encourage you to sing along if you'd like.
That's Jennifer Russell, who's just a beautiful voice for peace. So I'm going to shift a little bit into the topic today, but it's still related and connected to this idea of peace. And at the end of celebration, when we'll chat and say hello to one another, I would like to do a circle for peace, so that we can all really experience that shift from not peace to peace. And we'll do some prayers, some treatments, and just some moments of peace and a little bit of music. So whoever wants to stay for that is welcome to stay if you're here in person. So I have a question for you. What comes to mind? What's the first thing that pops in your mind when you hear the word rich?
Money.
Ah, money. What else?
Health.
Health.
Full life.
Full life.
Freedom.
Freedom.
Fabulous.
Fabulous.
Flavor.
Flavor. Must be a cook.
Yeah.
He's a cook, right? Yeah, so isn't it interesting that when we hear the word rich, we have all kinds of interpretation, all kinds of words that come to mind. And really, if you think about it, they're all relative. It's the same when I ask you, what's the first word that comes to mind when I say the word poor?
Lack.
Lack.
Poverty.
Poverty.
Despair.
Despair.
Begging.
Begging.
Struggle.
Struggle.
Helpless.
Helpless. Hopeless. Yeah, so it's a whole different experience, right? It's like the flip side. But when we talk about duality in our teaching, which is part of our human experience, as long as we're in a body, we're going to experience that, because it shows us that we have a freedom in our choosing. But the idea of duality is that a lot of time it's about the idea behind it that does not reflect opposites. And that's coming back to what we teach in the Science of Mind teaching, is to say, okay, here's the physical, but there's the metaphysical, which is a bird's eye view. It's above the physical. It's the place where there are no opposites. And so sometimes we get lost. We get a little bit lost in this perceptive experience, in the world of duality, in our own interpretation. And the invitation is to see not either or, but both and all the time. And that can be challenging. So what I'm really talking about is this idea called spiritual poverty and spiritual richness, which is always an inner experience. The truth is that you have within you a life of infinite riches. There is an infinite richness in each and every one of us. It's our essence. It's our true nature. Some call it God, some call it Buddha, some call it Allah, some call it my higher power. But it's our essential nature, the part of us that never dies, the part of us that doesn't change. What is within us is a world of infinite riches, abundance, creativity, joy, peace, harmony, love, that is accessible, that is always available equally to everyone. It doesn't say, well, Franny gets a little bit more than Kathy, just because, right? We say it's equal because that's how the infinite works. And so let's talk about looking at rich and poor from the perspective of our teaching and get some clarity, so that the clarity can then be brought to life by each and every one of us in our own unique way. I think it's so interesting that Mother Teresa always said that when she came to the United States, she experienced and witnessed more poverty than anywhere she had ever been in the world, including in Calcutta. And she said it's not a poverty of stuff and food and money. It's a poverty of spiritual proportion. It's a poverty of loneliness and isolation and believing that you don't have enough. Isn't that interesting that we live in probably the richest country in the world and we experience lack like no other? Isn't it interesting that the world is so infinitely rich and we're still seeing poverty at massive proportions, even in our own towns? That just talks about how it's structural, how it's political, how it's systemic, how it is an issue that is beyond anything that we can even fully grasp because it's so complex. So clarity then. We teach in the Science of Mind philosophy, as many spiritual teachings do since the beginning of time, that as within, so without. That the inner world is manifest in the outer world. Our consciousness created our body, not the other way around. And our consciousness is connected to how we experience the body, how we experience our physical body, how we experience the body of life, the body of work, the body of relationships, the body of abundance. It's always consciousness first. And boy, girl, are we resistant to that, right? Because we want to make it about this or that person or this person. And so what we learn is that the idea of the riches of life themselves, the richness of our inner life is reflected in the world, but it's also, we can use it the other way around. We can kind of say, that's so interesting. I'm seeing poverty. What is that in me? What is the belief I still hold that makes this possible? Because the individual and the collective are not separate. They're intricately connected, right? And so I want to start by saying this is not about shaming, because I think metaphysics, including the Science of Mind teaching, including the prosperity teachings, the prosperity gospels, still have that element of shaming, where it says, what's wrong with your consciousness? It's no different than saying you are and then calling it something limited, right? I remember the woman who was my voice teacher, although I'm not a singer, she did it for my speaking skills, Hester. I feel like I'm beginning to look like her more and more. I looked at a picture of her the other day. We have the same hair now. She used to say that when she used to come to the spiritual community when we were in our other location, if somebody coughed, people would turn around and say, what's in your consciousness? So there's that shaming thing that we sometimes still experience. You know, maybe recently somebody said to me, what's going on with you because you're experiencing this or that, right? So the idea is that we wanted to be informing rather than shaming. We wanted to just be informing that when I look at my outer life or my health or my relationships, it's not so much about, well, what's wrong with me or what's wrong in my consciousness, even though that's the human tendency, but what information am I receiving that I can actually use to kind of look at and see if that's really true, whether that's something that I want to celebrate or whether it's something that I want to change. So it's just information. What we do with it can then become something completely different. So we look at duality in a way as a burden. Rich, poor, good, bad, black, white, up, down. All those opposites we have a tendency to look at as a burden. It's almost like in spiritual life, we're supposed to just be on this side and that doesn't exist. No, it's to stand in both worlds and say, how do I take this information and how do I live it in the highest and best ways, knowing that I have a lifetime to do so. And so, can we think of it all as a treasure trove? That everything I'm experiencing in my life is a treasure trove of information. I can work with that and turn it into a work of art, rather than to say, it's against me, or it's a limitation, or it's something to worry about, or be anxious about, or to fear, including when it comes to war and peace. I got to observe what went on in my mind when I heard the news of Russia. Well, the news has been going on since 2014, although we've been like, oh, right? But when we heard the news about the attacks, I was like, okay, how can I stand in this and not being for or against in either or? How can I be the presence of peace? How can I see that there is a law of cause and effect that didn't just happen now, that has been bringing this to this moment, and could there possibly be some good in it? I had some ideas, but I'll talk to you about that later if you want to know what they are. So I want to bring it back to a very, very well-known story, and I love telling this story because it's been around forever, but there's always at least one person in a group that has never heard this story. And if you've heard this story, I invite you to hear it in a new way. It's the story of the two wolves. The Cherokee grandfather is talking to his grandson, and they're talking about life and life struggles. And the grandfather says, well, grandson, it's like this. It's like there are two wolves inside of us. One wolf is wounded and wild and mangy and ugly and dangerous and mean and ugly and nasty and afraid. And the other wolf is healthy and happy and full of life and playful and peaceful and calm and relaxed. And so the grandson says, but Grandpa, which wolf wins? And the grandfather says,
Whichever wolf you feed.
whichever one you feed. Yeah, so that's the check-in, right? When we're struggling, especially, what part of myself am I feeding? Am I giving a lot of attention? Am I giving a lot of airtime? Am I hanging out with the most? When we pay attention to that, it will give us information about where we are in life, why we're struggling, or why we're celebrating. And so that whole idea I want to bring into the understanding that when we focus on our inner riches rather than our outer lack, we have a different experience. If I'm worried about where my next meal is going to come from, or how I'm going to pay my rent, and I'm obsessed with that, or I'm not enough, or I don't have enough, or I'm worried about relationships, I'm going to feel different than if I trust and know that I live in an abundant universe and that the good that's available anywhere to anyone is available to me. That's not always possible when we're in the midst of the struggle, right? But because we are who we are, and because we're part of a spiritual community and we call ourselves spiritual people and are on a spiritual path, we have a greater responsibility to make a difference in the world where that is still experienced. And so that is because the individual is the collective. The personal is the universal. It's all connected. And so where do we start then? Well, we start within. We start within. We start with ourselves. When I was playing that one song and the first minute and a half was not a song, and it was just music, what was happening? What were you noticing? If I walked out this door and left you just hanging, what would happen? Those are things that we can think about, right? If I'm in traffic and I'm late for an appointment and it's a dead stop and there's no movement, what happens? If I get a phone call from the IRS, what happens? If the police is behind you and he lights up his car, what happens?
On our way here.
Right? Those are all moments to notice what happens inside. And for me, the goal is stay calm, stay calm. Notice what happens. Choose peace, choose calmness. That's a lifelong practice. And so we start within, and we start with this idea that love is all there is. If love is all there is, how can I be more of an instrument of love? And peace is just another word for love. Peace is just another word for riches, inner riches, right? We want to pay attention because the more we are experiencing a lack of peace, the more we are responsible for war happening anywhere on the planet. We have to begin to realize, if we are on the spiritual path, which we are, is that we either contribute to war or peace by means of our own consciousness. And so if we cannot create more peace for ourselves in our own little bubbles, then at least we can do it for the world, for others, right? And so where do we begin then? Well, we start within, and then it's this question of, what do I know for sure? What do I know for sure? Maybe I'm not experiencing it yet, but I know that I know that I know. For me, they are the basic principles of our teaching. I know there is one spirit, one God, one life, one creator that is present in everyone, everything, everywhere, all the time. I know that. But then the question is, where do I have room to live that? Where can I embody that? Maybe with my loved ones, maybe with leaders, maybe with our politicians, maybe with Mother Nature, maybe with our own body, maybe with our relationship to money or to career. We all have places. And if you're anything like me, enough for the rest of our lives, right? And so the knowing then becomes living it, and the living it becomes a practice. It's a daily practice. It's just if you were in sports or you were a musician, you have to daily practice to stay fresh and alive and strong and effective. And so we start within, we know what we know, we look at how we can live what we know, and we keep bringing that to life. And then the next thing is we give, we serve, we show up in the world, sometimes quietly and sometimes out loud. I'm sure to some degree or another you've all experienced being in a room of people where there was so much joy. And you're like, oh, I love being here. Maybe it's here. Or maybe you've walked in a room where you thought, oh my gosh, you can cut this tension with a knife. And in that moment you decided to walk into the center and just be the presence of peace quietly, and you felt a shift in consciousness in the room. That's possible if that's something you've never experienced. You don't even have to say anything, right? We don't walk in and say, hey, everybody, shut up and be peaceful. They'll probably kick you out. But you can walk in the middle of the room and be the presence of peace and feel it ripple out. It's just energy. It's just a life force. And so we pay attention to serving then, not from a place of emptiness or fear or worry or anxiety. It doesn't work, by the way. But to be the place of love and peace and harmony, and to know what we know and to serve with that. to come in with that, to be that, do the best of our ability. That's guilt-free and shame-free, right? So we do this by being who we are. We do this with our lives. We do this with our environment. We do this how we drive in traffic. We do this how we deal with service when we have to make a phone call to tech support. Right? Those are times when I just want to give it to them. And instead I remember it's a job they're doing. So I can be the presence of peace in that day and encouragement. So we do this with our consciousness. We do this with our lives. We do this with how we show up. We do this with our faith, our trusting the universe. We do this with our practices. And I don't know about you, but I think it's really needed. I think we can really use us to be the presence of peace in the world, starting with ourselves. It's a profound responsibility we all have once we have a desire to be more spiritual, to be in a spiritual community, to practice spirituality, right? And so it's a shift then. This idea of richness is a shift from, oh, it starts within. And when I cultivate an experience and dwell in the infinite riches within me, it must take root and it must show up in my body, my mind, my heart, my soul, my world. And can I look at the world and have it be a reflection of where there's room for me to experience more peace and share it with the world around me? Because we know that peace begins within. Peace begins with us. There's no other way. And so, can we be grateful? Can we be grateful that no matter what the world or the news is showing me, that I am a channel for peace? Can we be grateful that each of us right now are a channel for peace with whatever peace we feel inside, and that it's enough? And that if there's room for more, we know what to do. We know what to do. It's a simple question, but a simple answer. A simple question in spiritual practice and meditation, and usually a simple answer that we cannot dismiss, but get to follow. All right, so I have a couple of words that came across this week from our listserv of colleagues, and it's from this thing called You by Ernest Holmes, where he says, when you become confused, stop and listen to your inner calm. Turn from the confusion to that deeper something within, and say this: I am submerged in peace. Let's say it together. I am submerged in peace. I am surrounded by peace. I am surrounded by peace. I am immersed in peace.
I am immersed in peace.
There's nothing but peace.
There's nothing but peace.
Peace deep.
Peace.
Calm.
Calm.
Undisturbed.
Undisturbed.
I think the song by Jennifer Russell was definitely created with the words by Ernest Holmes. Isn't that beautiful? All right, so this is an opportunity for us to reflect for a moment about what it is that we receive here, and how part of being part of a spiritual community is to support it. And the only thing that we can do to support this spiritual community is do our best, right? And it's different for everyone, and no one is judged for that. But it is an idea of sacred circulation, because I give, I receive. So just for a moment, close your eyes and see if there's something that is yours to give today, tomorrow, next week, whether it is a talent or some volunteer work or a donation. And if it is a donation, there's a basket between the two doors. You can go on the website, you can text to give, my personal favorite. There's many different ways that you can support our spiritual community so that it cannot just feed you, but it can feed all those who are yet to come. And so open your eyes. And just a reminder that we'll have a peace circle. And for those of you that want to stay, now let's close with a healing treatment. In this very moment, as I close my eyes and withdraw my attention from the outer world and bring it to the inner world, I realize that I am in the oneness of all life. There's only the one, and it is spirit in its multiple forms. And I feel the blessing of life itself flow through me. I can feel it when I pay attention to my heartbeat. I can feel it when I feel my lungs expand and contract. And when I say I, mine, me, I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about that presence, that power that is in each and every one of us, that place of the oneness of all life. And so today, I realize that there is an infinite source of richness within me in its many forms, whether it's love, peace, harmony, joy, laughter, beauty, grace, that is ever available, ever giving of itself. And I know how to go there. I know how to go to the well and feel immersed and feel nourished and feel fed and feel healed. Knowing that healing is wholeness, and that in this place at the center of my being, there's only that perfect wholeness. It's where I came from, it's where I'm going, it's what's the truth of my life, and so I get to be honest and responsible for where and how I feel broken. Different at different times, of course. And I get to be the one to heal that by going to the source of all that is good and allowing the healing to happen. I realize that it's not hard work. It's actually so easy and so simple that my mind wants to argue with it and say, no, that can't be it. Today I know that that is it. The presence and the power of divine love in and around me. That I am, as a unique individualization of the one, here to spread, here to witness, and here to be a healing presence in the world. I trust this. I infuse it with awareness and mindfulness and reflection. I let go of any fear, guilt, or shame, and I trust the healing that is not just happening in and around me, but on this beautiful planet. And so it is.
So it is.
So we're going to play another song after the recording. And you're welcome to sing along because it's probably very familiar.